All right. Well, we are live on the Unspirituality channel. That's right. We're live, and we have got an interview with a gentleman who was in a. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. All right, let me turn that off. Haven't done this in a while. Anyway, we're gonna have an interview with a gentleman who was in a disciplinary cult. We're gonna share some of his. He's gonna share some of his thoughts on what happened in this cult. I thought it would be pretty interesting. And before we go there, I want to thank Robert, Mr. Helfrich, for uploading all the old videos on this channel, and bringing the old stuff back to life. And I do appreciate that. And so, firstly, I want to invite everybody to check out the Zach Feldman show. I'm going to be on the Zach Feldman show next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And so if you want to check that interview out, he's got a pretty big audience. So I'm kind of excited about that. And then also I invite you to check out my website. This is my personal website on the current projects that I'm working on. And then, of course, you can also check out the website that's specific to this channel, the Unspirituality Exposing the Woo. And then also you can go over to the Odyssey channel, which is right there. All the links are in the description box. So you're able to go into the description box and find out where to go for all of that. Okay, so I haven't done this in a while. I'm trying to figure out all the little click here, click there. Okay, so firstly, let me see here. So let me just pop something up right here. Okay, so just little orientation here. So this was called the Spring Creek Lodge. I'm going to put it right here before I introduce Jordan. I'm going to put it right here. So this was the Spring Creek Lodge Academy. Spring Creek Lodge Academy, located in Thomas Falls, Montana, was first opened as a W.W.A.S.P school in 1996. I'm not sure what that is, so hopefully Jordan will clear it up. In 1996 by Cameron Pullen and Dan Pert, along with the Chapin Pullen, Cameron's brother. At its peak, it housed over 500 students. 2004, SCL was investigated concerning the death of a 17-year-old girl by the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services, resulting in a complaint filed for child abuse and neglect against the school, and specifically its directors, Cameron and Chapin Pullen. The girl's mother also sued them for wrongful death and neglect. In 2006, Spring Creek Lodge was entangled in yet another lawsuit, this time on behalf of 353 plaintiffs, all citing multiple abuses and fraud at the WWAS program and various affiliates. So to just give you sort of a little orientation on what this person that I'm about to introduce you to was involved with. And I'm curious if there was a religious aspect to this. So let's bring Jordan in. And real quick, let me see. Where are you, Jordan? Hold on a second. Boom. There you are. Okay, so hello, Jordan.
Hey.
And Jordan, so it's Jordan Erickson, right?
Von Erickson.
Jordan Von Erickson. And might want to just get a little closer to your mic so we can hear you a little clearer would be great.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I can hear you a little bit better now. Or talk a little louder or something like that. Okay, so what does do you know what the WWASP represents?
Yeah, Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, if Jordan is not is loud enough on his mic, please let us know in the description box. We make sure we can hear everything that he's saying. So was there a religious aspect to this group?
Okay, so that's like a double part question kind of. So WWASP is the umbrella company, umbrella big corporation or whatever that is the umbrella of all these other schools. And
right.
There's two branches essentially under that umbrella. There's the residential treatment centers, which are
Okay.
not really religious, and then there's the Lester Roloff boarding schools, which does have the religious aspect to it, mainly Christian and what was the other one? Like Mormon, a lot of different religions, but mainly Christianity and Mormonism for sure.
Okay.
And what was the other one? Like Mormon, a lot of different religions, but mainly Christianity and Mormonism.
Okay. I want to make sure real quick that we don't have any type of an echo. Hold on one second, Jordan. Let me check something. Again, we decided to do this just a couple hours ago.
And what was the other one?
Hold on.
Like umbrella, big corporation.
Okay, so we're good, folks. Just needed to double check. Okay, so there was a Christian influence on it, which I'm not surprised. And again, you know, the thing that I have to say about Christianity, there's a lot of I think there's a lot of sweet Christians out there. In fact, the people that I am, the house that I'm house sitting in is a Christian couple, and they actually they're not a hell and damnation couple. They just go after the good things that they got in that patterned after Christ. So I really appreciate that in Christians, but it's the hell, damnation, and that kind of what's called poisonous pedagogy, which is this authoritarian way of treating children. Spare the rod, spoil the child, sort of thing. And so tell us a little bit about how you got involved in it, and share your story, my friend.
Okay, so initially I got sent. The day I went there officially was January 23rd, 2007. I was essentially tricked by my parents. They said we were going to check out a school, and I was kind of out of it. I'd been experimenting a little bit with marijuana and alcohol, a little bit, nothing major, but I had been out the last few nights and I was short on sleep and whatnot. So anyways, they tricked me and said we're going to check out the school, and I fell asleep various times during the trip, and I kept on waking up and we still weren't at the destination. So I kept on asking, like, where are we actually going? What is happening? And they were like, oh no, we told you we're going to check out the school. And so we finally get there, and when I got there, it was hella snowy, so I thought it was a ski resort at first, honestly. And we pull up into we drive up this long driveway, this dirt driveway, and we come up to this like trailer, which was Staff Central. And essentially I walked out of the car with my parents, went into Staff Central, and they took me into the back room with my parents, and they said, do you know why you're here? And I was like, no, not really. And they said, well, you're here because you're a bad child and you've done like you've done horrible stuff to your parents, and now you're going to be expected to graduate this program. And so that hit me like a ton of bricks, man. It was crazy.
You're completely forced into it. And did you talk to your parents at that point?
Okay, so I tried to. I was like begging my parents, like, Dad, please give me one more chance. I'll be a good kid. Like, please don't leave me here. Please don't leave me here. And I was begging them, and I was crying and all that. But they don't let you do that. They intervened in between. They're like, hey, stop manipulating. Stop trying to manipulate your parents.
Oh my God.
You're doing the same stuff. You're doing the same stuff.
You had to have. I mean, before we go any further, I just got to touch on this. The level of betrayal had to be pretty darn deep. Is that something that you ended up working out, or can you touch on that before we go forward?
Yeah, I felt completely betrayed by my parents. I felt like, that, I was a troubled child. I'll admit that. From birth, I was born with fetal alcohol effects, not the syndrome, but I was born with fetal alcohol effects, and I was essentially born with ADHD. So I was a lot more hyper, and I was rambunctious. So I will admit I'm accountable for, I was a tough child. I know that. But to do something to this extent and to just bring me up there and like drop me off, it felt to me like, not that they were like, they didn't want me, but like kind of felt like they didn't want me, and they didn't care enough to like really just work it out, like go to a therapist and like, or try a different therapist, because they tried other therapists before, but maybe try another therapist. Like, you don't have to shit me off. And I just felt completely betrayed and abandoned, man. Like it was hard.
And for good reason, because you were betrayed and abandoned.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's accurate feeling. because it's exactly what happened. Whether your parents had good intentions or whatever, you know what I mean? The action of that was exactly what you felt.
Yeah. Okay, so after that, we initially my parents left and whatnot, and the last thing my dad told me was, because I found out later that this was more of my mom's pushing. Like she was the one that kind of said, we're gonna do this. My dad was kind of just along for the ride because he was trying to save the marriage type thing. So he told me before I left, he's like, hey, son, this is the hardest thing I have done and probably ever will do, is saying goodbye to you. And he's like, I want you to know that I love you, but this is just how it's going to have to be for now. And
for your own good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's for your own good, yeah. So after that, what happens after that is they initially buddy you up with somebody, and you go into one of 4 lower level families. I started off in the names of the families were Honor, Respect, Quest, and Genesis. And I started out in Honor, and so I go into the family, and everybody, like the second I walk in, because you have like about 30 teenagers of various ages, of various backgrounds. Like you had anywhere from like gangbangers in the hood to like drug dealers to sexual predators were in there. Wow. People who assaulted people, all walks of life, people that their parents just didn't want them. So the second I walk in there's 30 people, 30 eyes on me, checking me out, trying to see what I'm about.
And many of these people you've been interviewing, right, on your channel?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so for those of you who want to check out his channel, it's called and then the link is in the description box. It's called Straight Outta BS Podcast. He just opened this just a number of weeks ago, and look at all the interviews he's got. I mean, this is everyone just coming out of the woodwork. So I mean, this is literally just weeks new, and I just am shocked at how much how fast it's grown. So this was great that you were able to contact all of these people, and they responded so quickly. So go ahead. So you were saying 30 people in a room.
Yeah, I had like 30 or so or more eyes on me, because how the cabin is split up, just to paint a picture for people. Initially you have these big, like huge cabins, right? And there was a top and a bottom level, and then each side was split by a door. There was a door in the middle that split these 2 cabins. So on each side of those doors was 30 plus teens, right? So I had 30 or at least 30 eyes on me when I walked in there. They're trying to check me out, see what I'm about, see where I'm from, see if I know why I'm there, all of that stuff. And I made the mistake right off the bat. I, not gonna lie, I was trying to fit in. I felt so alone at that point, my first day especially. Like I wanted to make a friend, like I wanted somebody I could talk to. So like I was going out for people's acceptance, as they say in the program, and I made the mistake of somebody had asked me what my favorite cigarette smoke was. And then they chimed in and said, oh, Campbell 69s, which don't even exist. And I said, yes. And I took me months to ride that off, because the second I said that and they caught me in a lie, they're like, oh, this guy's a liar. Like, watch, what else is he going to lie about, type thing.
Right.
So instantly I was ostracized by pretty much the entire family, which made me feel even more alone. And so the first and let me just go over like an average day, for example. So we wake up about I think it was 6:15 every morning, and the wake up would be they'd turn on the lights, and they'd be like, okay, everybody out of bed. You got 30 seconds to have your feet on the floor, or you get a Cat 3, which is a Category 3 consequence. You lose 50 to 80 points. And this whole thing's based on a level system. So they tell you to get up, and then we have like a morning workout. Like it's you have to do like 250 push-ups as a group or whatever in the morning. Then we go to breakfast. You couldn't have condiments unless you earned them. You had to earn condiments. If you didn't eat,
how did you earn them?
You had to earn enough points, and you had to gain levels. So
how did you earn points?
Before we continue, let me go over the point system.
Okay, sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the structure of this program essentially is, excuse me, when you come into the program, at least when I was there, you start out at level 2, 250 points, right? And so in order to get to level 3, I have the paperwork here somewhere, but essentially you have to get a certain amount of points. I don't remember how many exactly, but certain amount of points to get to level 3, then you have to vote up and get the support of your peers. So you can't just get the points and like sit back and like keep to yourself type thing. You have to make relationships in this place, or you're not going to go anywhere. So you have to have the full support of your peers, and then you vote up to 3, and then after that's 3 stars, and then you vote up to 4, 5, and 6. And each of these, once you get onto level 4, you get to go onto upper facility, and I'll get into that, which is like you're essentially a cop. You essentially become a cop, and you start calling lower levels on the rules. And
so everybody's tattling on each other.
Yeah, you're disciplinarian, and
kind of sounds like our culture now.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely see the comparison for sure. So that's how the levels worked, right? And then you'd have consequences for just about anything, for spitting, for looking out of line, for not asking permission to talk, for looking at the girls, for insubordination, which could pretty much mean anything. You could get it for self-harm, self-infliction. So if you didn't eat, like I was getting at, like they would be like, oh, so you're self-inflicting, so self-correct, you're category 5, which you lose all your points, level 1, 0 points. And then you go to either study hall, which is a room. Essentially, study hall is a cabin, right? And they have like a bunch of stalls that you sit at, and essentially you have to either write sentences, like 5,000 sentences, or like, this is what I did, this is what I'm going to do next time, this is why I'm not going to do it anymore, and like to really ingrain it in your head, like full brainwashing in effect here. And or you get sent to what they call the Hobbit, or intervention, or solitary confinement, as it's known in the real world. They have nicknames for it. I attest, because probably they don't want people to know right away what those things are. But intervention is no fun. And so if you get a Cat 5, you go instantly to, most of the time you go straight to intervention, solitary confinement. So essentially there was rules against everything. Anything you could think of, there's a rule against it. And if there wasn't
now, was there any religious indoctrination in these rules, like anything that was voiced regarding these rules, or was the religion just sort of part of the structure? How was that? How was the religious factor put in and around that?
Okay, so the school that I went to wasn't really religious. There was schools that are like mine that were funded by Lester Roloff, a guy named Lester Roloff, and those were more religious. And I do know a little bit about that side, so I can explain. In those schools, it was more of spare the rod, spoil the child type thing, like you were talking about. Complete. I mean, I've interviewed like 2 or 3 people that went to these programs, so I can kind of speak on it. Their main thing was, anything you did at home, you're a sinner, you're a bad person. You need to redeem yourself in the eyes of the Lord. And, they'd have to go to chapel like every day. And, of course, the preacher, from what I've heard, would be screaming at him, you're going to hell and damnation, like all of the hell and damnation stuff, and just constantly beating them down with the facade of, oh yeah, it's Christianity, or oh yeah, it's Mormonism, so it can't be bad, like it could put up some veil, trying to hide behind, while they're beating children behind closed doors.
So it was, hold on a second here. Let me show you something. Here we go. So it was more overt with you. It was, or covert with your group. It was more overt with those groups. This book right here, I want to highly recommend you and anyone else to understand here is the hidden cruelty in child rearing and the roots of violence. And all of this stuff is rooted in the Judeo and Christian and the Puritan influences. The further you go back, the further back you go in history, it's a horror of how children were treated and how they were looked at as expendable, and you had to discipline them because they were born sinful. And that whole attitude of, when you have a problem, that's where it came from. And then so they had this whole idea is you've got to basically get the devil out of them, so to speak, and make them line up and force them to do the right thing and make them feel guilty and all of this stuff. And that's where it all comes from, rather than the approach that we've kind of evolved into, which is to actually listen. Listen, is fascinating. Okay, go ahead. I just wanted to put that book, because that book really explains the structure of this kind of thing that you're talking about.
For sure. Yeah. And I wanted to also say, like the whole thing, the whole point of all of these programs under the W.A.S.P umbrella was essentially their motto is to break you down to then build you back up into what they believe you should be, or
which is mind control.
Yeah,
brainwashing.
Totally. Yeah. So, which, you know, in the right setting, if you, in my opinion, if you work through stuff by choice, if you're choosing to work on it, right, that's a whole nother thing, as opposed to being forced into it and you have to do this. So essentially we would go and eat breakfast, and, you know, like I said, if you didn't eat enough or you asked for too much food, you'd get a self-inflicted, which is a category 5. And so we'd eat breakfast, and we'd go, then most of our time was spent in school. So here you would like teach yourself, like we'd get a textbook, we'd read a chapter and take the test for each chapter. So it was essentially homeschooling, but we weren't being taught by any teacher. We were teaching ourselves. And that was 6 days a week, almost all day. So we'd spend the majority of the day, with an exception of PE, lunch, and dinner, in school. So a lot of time in school. We'd go to lunch, and then after dinner we would have PE, which is physical education, obviously. But you know, that was all right. I mainly kept to myself, but essentially that was a day. Then we went into the cabin. And for people that don't know, they had magnets on the doors in these cabins. They had key cards that they would slide. So anybody who tried to run would get tackled by like 50 people and pretty much beat bloody. And, you know, they made a whole scene of it. Like, this is what happens if you run. This is why you don't run.
So this was mob mentality. It was, I mean, this is what you see with today's democracy, which is mob mentality.
Yeah.
And everybody's policing everybody.
Yeah.
There's no due process. There's just, he's bad. Everybody get into a frenzy, and everybody's trying to line up and obey the authorities, and that justifies the violence.
Yeah. And, you know, of course, if you get caught running, you get sent straight to solitary confinement intervention. And so, you know, not like, you know, maybe they needed a counselor. Maybe they were fucking just fed up. Maybe they were depressed. Maybe they needed to talk to somebody, not set in solitary confinement. Like, for fuck's sake, you know, I'm sorry. Could I swear?
Yeah, that's fine. It's that's fine.
Okay.
Less swearing is preferred now that I understand YouTube algorithms, but express oneself is as you will.
Okay, for sure. So yeah, that would be an average day. On Saturdays, it was a little bit different. We occasionally got to work in the kitchen, which was pretty fun. You know, you got to actually eat as much food as you wanted when you worked in the kitchen, but being stuck in the dish pit kind of sucked. It was an average day. And then we had these self-help seminars that you had to do, which is also a part of the program that you needed to do to graduate. And by the way, I graduated. I was actually the last person to graduate from this school before it was shut down due to all the lawsuits. So I was there right up to the end. So these seminars is where things start getting really crazy, and where I messaged you the other day and said that now looking back on it, I think they might have been trying to force Kundalini releases out of us, because what they would do is this is where they would really do the breaking down completely, shattering our ego, shattering our sense of self, our identity, and then trying to build us back up into what they believe that we should be. So how they would do that is a bunch of different processes, and there would be a facilitator that ran these seminars that would stand up at the front of the room. This was about 200 to 300 people that you didn't even know in a room when you would go in there, and essentially the facilitator would, if nobody raised their hand and showed up, which I ended up doing, I'll get into that, but they would point at a random person and be like, hey, they'd have a file on you prior to this too, of all of your trauma. And they'd have a whole file about what triggers you, what your trauma is, what you've been through, all of that stuff, and what
this is just like Scientology.
Yeah.
A lot like Scientology.
And then they would point you out and be like, hey, Jordan, for example, why don't you stand? Like, I'm just using myself as an example. He'd be like, hey, Jordan, stand up. Why don't you share about how you were raped when you were 7 and how that made you feel in front of like 300 people or so that don't even know you, and then you'd have to, on the spot, essentially show up for them. If you hadn't been through any trauma like that, and because there were some people that they would just point to and see how they would react and see if they would go along with it, and there were others that they had a file on. And so they would point at you and put you on the spot and be like, share about that. How did that make you feel? And if you weren't real enough, then they would ask you to come back next time, and you'd have to wait a couple months to come back to the seminar. So they would do stuff like that. They would have different processes where they'd put us in small groups, and we'd have to share about our trauma, and then we'd have to receive feedback from everybody in the group. And this feedback could be, it's all neutral. None of it's an attack. Don't view any of it as negative, which to be fair, the majority of feedback, if you're being constructive, and like constructive criticism can actually help you. But the way they were doing it here was to break you down and really be like, oh, in my experience, you're not being real enough. You need to show more tears. You need to get realer. Like, how did it really make you feel?
What's interesting, if I may, before is, the breaking down process is common through all cults. And it's interesting because that's the natural process of a child growing into its adult self but it happens over a period of time very organically, where it grows from this younger self into an older self, and this so it's like what happens on some level. It's like however this came into form, but it's like on some level something knows that this is the way it goes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet they're trying to control it, and they're trying to push it, and they're trying to force it. It's like when you have those weekend seminars of enlightenment,
Mm-hmm.
ascension. You're going to ascend. It's like, no, how many decades do you have? How many decades do you have to really wake up? How committed are you to it? No, I want to wake up, in the right, whatever. So it's it's the same kind of thing, just forcing something that's supposed to be natural, and which can backfire. Do you feel like it stunted your spiritual growth?
Okay, so for me personally, let me give a little backstory. So the first year I was there, for context, I rebelled. I didn't want to be there. I was getting removed, sent to solitary confinement every day. I was like, fuck this place, fuck all of you. I don't want to be here. I'm just going to essentially act up until my parents pull me, because that's how I had acted at home, is if I didn't get my way, and I'll admit to this, I would throw a fit until I got my way. And, that always worked at home. So I figured, maybe, if I fuck up enough here, if I fuck up enough here, they'll see, oh shit, or, God forbid they kicked me out or whatever, oh, we can't handle this kid, because that happened back home too.
Yeah, you were trying to escape through you got success with your parents, so you thought you'd apply the same tactics with this group, and did it work?
No, not at all. Actually, they ended up, I got removed so much that after about a year had passed, they said, okay, check this out. You can either start to work your program and do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way and send you to Tranquility Bay in Jamaica. And in Jamaica, they don't even have child protection laws. And from what I've heard and the people I've interviewed over there, is they straight hate Americans. Like, hate them.
What's the name of this place?
Tranquility Bay, Jamaica. It's shut down now, but they were breaking kids' legs because they didn't want to listen, from what I hear, and putting them in, that was another place that put them in dog kennels, but there was a place that was putting people in dog kennels too. That's high impact.
Tranquility Bay was a residential treatment facility affiliated with Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs and Schools, located in Calabash Bay. Facility operated from 1997 to 2009 and received notoriety for its harsh and often abusive treatment of its students, eventually shutting down in 2009 after allegations of child abuse came to light through lawsuits and highly publicized student testimony.
Yep. So after they
that ain't no joke.
Yeah, it ain't no joke, man. So after I got threatened with that, I was like, okay. Essentially, after that point, I went into autopilot, and I was like, look, man, from what I hear about that, I'm not going there. So I was like, whatever. Essentially, I told myself at that point, whatever I have to say, whatever I have to do, I'm going to fucking do it, because I need to get the fuck out of here. Like, I'm not going to Jamaica. Excuse my vernacular. But
so you had a big enough motivator. They needed to find the right stick
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You always got the stick and the carrot. So they found the stick for you.
Yeah. Yep. So that's a little backstory. So essentially, when I started to work my program is when I actually started to go through the seminars the first time. And so once I started to work my program and I started to see, because from what I gathered from the seminars, they want you to be real, right? And I already had a bunch of trauma that I knew that I could talk about, my rape and all of that stuff. So initially, when I went in there knowing about how these seminars were run prior to it, since it took me so long to go through my first seminar, I stood up right away, raised my hand, and said, "Hey, I'm Jordan. This is what I've been through." First day of the seminar, got right down into it and just started doing what I felt they wanted me to do. And so for me personally, I feel like in the long run, it's kind of stunted my growth, but in the moment, I feel like it made me realize who I was inside. They have a whole thing called discovering your magical child, which is essentially, you talk about something very similar, except you have a different name for it. Your inner child, that, the innocent, beautiful, nothing ever stressing them out, the completely innocent and pure version of yourself. And we're taught about how to retrieve that. And then we make what's called an I am statement, which mine is, I'm an empathetic, loving, handsome, and powerful man. And then in focus, which is the discovery, which is the seminar after discovery, you make a purpose statement, which mine is, my purpose is to unconditionally love both myself and others while maturing through growth and integrity. So for that, it taught me, I know who I am now. I don't let people put me down. I'm very solid when I say things. And so in that aspect, it made me a stronger person. But there's still several processes. One in general was called the lifeboat process that has scarred me to this day. And the lifeboat process was where they put us in a circle, or actually, no, we started on the floor and had our eyes closed, and we were guided through this like guided meditation, and it was all calm. And facilitator was just telling the story, and then all of a sudden she goes, bang! She goes, okay, all of a sudden the ship you're on is sinking, and now you have to choose who's going to die. So then they circled us up in a circle, right? And they had one circle on the inside and then one circle on the outside. And we would rotate right or left when they said so. And they'd be like, now this next person, look them in the eyes. And they'd say something like, now think of it, look at this next person and imagine this is your father who used to beat you at home, or whatever your trauma trigger would be. And then they'd be like, now vote, did they live or did they die? Did they deserve to live or did they die? And so you have to vote if they live or die. And that really fucked with me. And then they also, when it came down to like who was remaining and who got chosen to live, then you had to stand up. And I was one of those people that was chosen to live. And then they said, okay, now I want you to stand up and tell us why you deserve to live over everybody else. And so I got up and I went for like 10, 15 seconds and I couldn't do anymore. And that completely like devastated my confidence. The fact that I couldn't go up there and voice for longer than 15 seconds why I deserve to live. That for a long time had a really harsh toll on my confidence and self-worth.
Wow.
So that process in general sticks to me this day. And as a matter of fact, when I went through rehab recently to get off hard drugs and whatnot, they were trying to pull that process on me in a group we were doing there. And the second they started doing it and called the lifeboat process, I was like, nope, I'm out of here. Got up, walked out the room. I'm like, I'm not going through this shit again. And then they're like, oh no, you can go through it. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I was forcibly like traumatized by that shit, like against my will.
It's
like,
not for you. It's not for you. And it may work for somebody else, but that's the thing is, one formula for all doesn't work. That's why I like to teach people focusing, because that way you're going direct to your own signature and your own movement and your own pace and your own information, so you can trust and you can move, but those systems, quite a number of schools. There's what was it? I'm trying to think. There's a couple other schools. There is an offshoot of Scientology called EST. I think it was EST that had a lot of that. This system actually was in a number of different groups. One of them was EST. There was a couple other ones. The Forum is another one, and these were all forcing people. There is a good thing in if you join something like this. I learned this in Scientology. If your life exists between a 1 and a 3, they'll push you to a 15 to get you to a 10, right?
Yeah.
So they would do things like, we're going to call you at any point in time. You got to get up and you got to go meet us. So 3 a.m. in the morning, they get a call and you need to come down to the pier at the beach. Boom, yeah, boom, boom. You got a time frame and you got to get there, right? To totally change your patterns. And so those are all those methods of changing your pattern, rather than, it's like raising a child through a relationship rather than forcing.
Yeah.
So that's intense. Now, have you moved through any of that stuff? Is that still sticking with you?
I'm just, to be completely honest with you, over the past few years, I've just now, it's been, I graduated in there almost right before 2008, and I was there 22 months, and it's taken me up until about a year ago for things to like fully sink in and for me to actually honestly realize the depth of what happened there to me. I think I repressed a lot of things. And so just like having this podcast and talking to people and getting it out there, and it really helps me work through it. I wanted to touch on one more part about the seminars.
And if you would go back to, you were at that point of almost going to Jamaica, and then you straightened out. And so,
I'll go back to that too. Yeah. So the very last process they had us do in both of these seminars, or all of these seminars, right, was what they called a release process, right? So what they would have us do is, up until this point, like, and these are 2 or 3, so discovery's 2 days long, and this whole time, I forgot to mention, you're being sleep deprived. You're being given one sandwich essentially a day, like a sandwich for lunch, a sandwich for like one sandwich for each meal, right? And it had, bologna and cheese on it, and you were supposed to live off that. So not only were we being rationed food wise, we were losing sleep. So we were sleep deprived, and that's another thing they use. So these are 2 to 3 day long seminars, and so by the time you get to this release process, this has been days of tension and release and tension and building up tension, and they do it so not a lot of it's released. They don't want it to be released until this release process, so they build it up, and then you get to this crescendo point where they have us close our eyes, and then the staff comes around and puts these they have these towels that were wrapped completely a bunch of times in duct tape, right? And they put them behind our back, and then they'd say, now I want you to reach behind your back and pick up what's behind there. Pick it up, and when I say go, on the count of 3, I want you to let out all that anger, let out all of that emotion, let out all that rage. And so she'd say 1, 2, 3, and then people would start beating the floor, and you couldn't stop. This was like, in Discovery, I think it went on for like an hour and a half, and in Focus, they went for like 3 hours straight of just beating the floor. And so by the time you're supposed to have your eyes closed, but there was a few times when I opened my eyes just out of, just because of all the crazy shit that was going on through my head, because you're releasing so much psycho-emotional energy at that point that I would turn around, and I seen some people, Lilith? No. I seen some people, one person in general ended up punching the floor, and his knuckles were all bloody, and he was just punching the floor, and like blood was like flying all over. And so they just want us to get it all out. And this part is where I think they were trying to force Kundalini releases, because of all the psycho-emotional energy that they're trying to expel from people. Do you think that might be similar to a Kundalini release?
Well, it's all psycho-emotional energy. I don't think that they were in that term. You know what I mean? They were basically trying to, it's anger therapy, trying to get you to get it all out. So you'd be like, oh, I'm all better now. I got angry and I was suppressed. I wasn't allowed to be angry about stuff. And now I feel better. And, and it is therapeutic. to be able to find avenues and ways of letting, you have to let the emotions have a place in art, music, anything. Give it a place to speak, and sometimes it's you need to allow that shadow to have that, whether you draw it out. Some people do dark art, some horror art, and it's a great way to express it, because now you're in a space where you're giving it expression rather than being possessed by it. I don't think that they were trying to release kundalini, but this psycho emotional energy is that, and it can be part and parcel of releasing the kundalini in over a period of time. It is part of it, because if you look at it as all psycho emotional energy, one release affects another part of the system, affects another part of the system, affects another part of the system, and then as the whole thing begins to reach a point of vibration, and that's how it happened for me. But that took a long time, and it happened in a very harmonious, healing space, magical space. You know what I mean? So if it was to release during a traumatic experience, I would be concerned about that, because you don't want that serpent power to be released in a bad way, because it needs to be tamed. It needs to be balanced with, like how I teach it, with the dolphin and the inner child. You need to have that dragon, have that balance. If you don't, you can turn into a samurai wielding, decapitating, you've seen those people that are out, sometimes you see those people running around with a freaking hatchet, I don't know if they got their kundalini released, but I know when you have that kind of power and that kind of rage inside of you that's released, and you don't have any balancing power in it. So let me ask you a question. So you didn't go to Jamaica. You were like, ain't doing this. So you started to participate in the program. And then you eventually worked your way out of the program. So what happened? What happened after that? And then what led you to finally escaping the cults?
Okay. So I almost got sent to Jamaica. I started to work my program. And once I started to work my program and I got on the upper levels, and let me explain that first. So the upper levels is essentially, like I was saying, you're essentially a cop. They call you junior staff. You work closely with the staff members. Some days you'll work in the administration building. Essentially in the morning, you'll line up and be designated, okay, you're going to work Honor Family today, Jordan. John, you're going to work Quest Family. And then they divvy us up. Some of us would work the family, which is essentially consequencing kids. And not only that, but keeping law and order, keeping the flow smooth as possible.
Welcome to a micro thing of communism.
Oh,
hello, everybody. You're getting a nice education on what's coming down on the planet. Happy times. Happy times.
Happy.
Happy times. No, this is exactly it. And the food, food deprivation and all this stuff, it's all part of it. Go ahead.
And so they would divvy us up, and some days you'd be like, they also had a roamers, which would come and get some students to go to like doctor's appointments. You always had to have a buddy to take you in upper levels. So once I got into the upper levels, since I had spent so much time in the lower levels and dropped so many times, from, I'd get up to like level 3 and drop down to level 1, 0 points and feel like just F it all and all that. So after doing that and being on the lower levels and knowing what it's like to be picked on and to be singled out and to feel like you're alone and not have any friends, instead of getting power hungry, I took that as a chance to coach people. Like I would take people under my wing and just be like, look, I noticed this person's getting bullied or picked on. When I'm working the family, I'm telling you right now, that's not going to fly, because I'm a consequence you, I'm a consequence you, and I'm a consequence you if I see you fucking bullying somebody. And so I just, took people under my wing. And, I realized that now that I am in a position of power, do I want to abuse it or do I want to help people and make this a more enjoyable experience for people? Because I know what it's like. I've been through it. So I started coaching people, and this is where I started feeling like the bits of wisdom from the program came, right? I could use my power in a good way, right? I could help people. I could coach people. Not only that, I could help people through these seminars that are horrible in themselves, but while everybody else was hurling insults at the people in the seminars, right? I would be whispering in their ear, hey man, just keep it up. You're almost through this. Just tough through it, man. You're not a loser, none of that. Don't listen to them, and just try and possible. So from that, I gained, I saw the wisdom in the system, but there's so much bullshit mixed in with it that you really have to graduate from a place like this to see all of the little bits of wisdom that it had to offer. And that's where a lot of people don't understand, and they're like, oh, you're just saying the program was all good. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying in my experience, because I was forced to graduate and because I ended up staying for so long, I ended up was forced to see these little nuggets of wisdom. And people that stayed on the lower levels or got pulled or whatnot or never graduated never got to see those type of things.
Yeah, so it's the eat the grapes, spit the seeds out. Exactly. Sometimes people can't. It's either black or white for them. It's all bad or it's all good. But you have to. You glean something.
Yeah.
I mean, I know when I was in my cult, much like what you're talking about, there were things that I learned, and that so I understand.
For sure. Yeah. So with that, I did like that part of it. It wasn't enjoyable, but on the upper levels, you got to go down to a lower facility. You got to have your own little cabin thing. There was only 5 or 6 people in the cabin at that point, as opposed to 30. On the upper levels, more people were more focused about getting home. Look, we're almost home. We're trying to work our program. We're not really trying to fuck off and, break the rules and whatnot. So that was more enjoyable, but then I forgot to mention there was a PC1, PC2, and PC3 seminar that you also had to do. And PC1 and PC2 and PC3 were parent-child seminar 1, 2, and 3. And PC1 is essentially the first time you see your parents. And by the way, I didn't say this yet, but when you first get there, you have to wait at least 60 days to have your first phone call, right? But if you're level 1, 0 points, there's a catch. If you're level 1, 0 points and screwing off like I was, you don't get a phone call. You just get to write letters, and your letters are read. They read all your letters.
That's exactly what happened to me in the cult in Ohio. I couldn't talk to them. I could only write them a letter.
Yep. And then
it's the same structure for mind control. Same damn structure for mind control.
Yep. And if they
separate you from your parents, separate you from so that you can be in the cult, be reprogrammed by the cult. So this is after you've been through all this. Now you're getting the opportunity to confront your parents, and you're supposed to be all better now. And the parents are supposed to be all happy and grateful that they made the sacrifice to bring you through painful things. And you're supposed to come and thank them for the great sacrifice they made. How did this go?
Okay. So at PC1, it was really sad. The first thing they did is they lined us all up. All the kids were on one side of the seminar building, the parents on the other side, and we weren't allowed to touch them at all when they first got there, right? They had them, they made sure that they were there, and I know that they did this to mess with us, right? As much as possible. So they had us on the opposite sides of the room with our eyes closed, and they said, now on the count of 3, I want you to open your eyes and walk slowly towards your parents and embrace them. And they made us do this like really slow walk, almost crawl towards them. And then when I finally embraced them, all the tears start coming, and I'm really happy to see them. But at the same time, I'm instantly noticing how programized they sound and how different they sound. Like they sound like they've been brainwashed. Like they sound like they're almost reading from a script, almost. Like
because they prep them too. Yeah, they prep them too. Yeah.
The parents are just as gaslit as the kids usually on most times.
Yeah.
So, I was happy to see them, but at the same time, I wanted to tell them to get me the fuck out of there. And, all this shit's going on, and I've witnessed all this shit, but you can't say any of that. You have to act like everything's okay and that you're doing good. And, look at how good of a person I am now. And so it was weird, man. I felt like I was being fake the whole time. You know what I mean? With my parents, because, I wanted to show up for them. I didn't want them to feel like I was manipulating, quote unquote, because then they'd be like, oh yeah, why is he manipulating? And then you'd get a family rep involved, and then you'd be in trouble because you're manipulating. So that was
Right.
intense. It was crazy. And, you know, I wanted so bad to be like, why did you do this? Why couldn't we just like work this out? Why did you have to abandon me here with people I don't even know? Like, I didn't even know about hard drugs really until I went there. And that's where I learned about how bomb all the hard drugs were and how I needed to try them because they were so amazing. And so when I got out, I felt like all my teenage years had been taken away from me. So of course I was mad. I rebelled. I wanted my teenage years back. I wanted to experience what I lost, the time that I lost. And so
Now, is
yeah, it
that
was,
when you left after you met with your parents? Was that your final, like, meet your parents and then off you go? Did you go back with your parents? Did you go on your own way? How was your exit?
okay. So PC1 happened, and then your parents go back home. Then you wait a little while in the program. You go to PC2, which is in Utah. They send you to Utah. They put you on a plane, and they send you to a facility called Cross Creek, which is honestly looked even creepier than Spring Creek. At Cross Creek, they had a like 10-foot or higher tall fence with barbed wire around the whole facility, and it was just like this huge like manor house. And very similar structure to Spring Creek Lodge, the points and levels, the seminars, all of that. And so they sent us there, and we had PC2, which is like a lecture seminar, like all the other seminars, except for now we're working on what they call a life contract, which is essentially a contract that you make with your parents to essentially bring the program that you were just in home, bring that structure home, where you have what the hell is going on? Is that you with the
Yeah.
okay, can you hear it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what the fuck is going on here? Hold on a second.
Somebody on Skype is calling you.
What? Yeah, I know. Okay, there you go. I had to open the app real quick. Sorry
Well,
about that.
in Scientology, you have to sign a billion-year contract, so at least yours was a little shorter.
Yeah, but probably the same kind of aspect. I mean, you had to like you had non-working, working friends. You had a schedule. You know, you have to be home by this time at night. There was rules against everything. So essentially, PC2 is working on that life contract and putting it together. And then you go back to the program after that, and then you work. You finalize your life contract, and then PC3 is where you go and you present your life contract to your parents. Work out any of the what needs to be fixed with it or whatnot. So by the time you exit the program, what they want is to have a contract that you and your parents both agree on that you will actually follow, which didn't happen for me. But so then after PC3, you go back to the facility. And then when you graduate, this is one of the craziest things about it. They do a process, which is an all-day process essentially, which is called Trail of Lights, and it's the graduation ceremony. And essentially, you get blindfolded in the morning. And I was only with one other person when I graduated, so usually it's like 10 or 12 people at a time. But with me, it was two people. We were both blindfolded. I would put my hand on his shoulders in front of me, or vice versa, and we would have staff members calling, "Hey, over here," and we'd have to follow their voice. So it was like blind leading the blind type thing, and we'd have to do that like the whole day. I guess it was supposed to like teach us subservience and like some crazy stuff like that.
Yeah,
And so we'd have
it's a
to,
crazy house. You're in a crazy house. That's what it is.
yeah,
you
it
know.
was nuts. And so they had us doing stuff like that. They had us literally like, they didn't have me do this, but some of the kids, they had to walk up an entire mountain blindfolded as a team. They had to make it to the top before they graduated. But with us, they had us do chores blindfolded. So the whole day we were blindfolded. And then towards the end of the day, they had us led over to this room. And then they had our parents write us both letters as if we had died. The parents had written us like a letter, a farewell letter to us as if we had died. And so we had to read those letters out loud in front of like the whole facility to air out the dirty laundry and all of that. And so that was really traumatizing. And then the very last process is where they line everybody on the facility up. And this is actually one of the processes I actually like. I loved it. You get to pick your favorite song. Mine was Vitamin C, the graduation song. And you're blindfolded, And essentially you go like this, and then you get to the front of the line. There's one person on this side, one person on this side, and then they hold their hands up, and then you're like this at the front, and then you fall back and do a trust fall, and then they lift you up and crowd surf you all the way down to the end, and then put you back down on the ground, and then they let anybody that wants to say anything to you, how you help them in their program or whatnot, come up to and whisper anything they want into your ear. You helped me through all this stuff. Thanks for getting me through the hard times or whatever it was. And then you're officially done with the program and you get to go home after that. But it was crazy. I was there 22 months. If you have a perfect program, you maybe can get out of there in a year if you don't get any consequences.
I got lucky. I escaped on foot running. We didn't have a fence around us, but I made it to, it was out in the, Ohio, out in the rural areas. So, if you were running, you could easily see you're running because it was just acres of flatland around you. There were shrubs and stuff, but I had to find the just the right time to sneak out and just bail. And I ran to a neighbor's house and knocked on her door, and I said, can I use your phone? And I had to hide behind a trash can, and they went out looking for me and stuff. This brings back a lot of memories to me as well. But so you weren't able to escape. How old were you, by the way, during this?
So I was 16 when I got sent to the program, and I got there on January 23rd, 2007, and I was about to turn 18 when I left. I was there 22 months.
Okay, so my age, it was a different thing. You were still underage youth.
Yeah.
So that whole thought was you didn't have your own vehicle. You didn't, you know what I mean? And my parents didn't want me to go. Although I was dragged through the Worldwide Church of God and forced to do all this stuff by my mother.
Yeah.
And when I went to YWAM, did you ever hear of YWAM?
Yes.
Youth with a Mission?
Yes.
Yeah. So that wasn't as bad, but that was a lot. There was some elements to that. But yours was extreme for sure. And so when you got out, where did you go and what was it like for you? I bet your freedom level was insane.
Yeah. Before we go into that, I forgot one thing. So when halfway through my program, they have wilderness programs attached to this too. I forgot to say that at the beginning. So W.W.A.S.P umbrella, there's wilderness programs, wilderness therapy programs, residential treatment centers, and then the Lester Roloff religious boarding schools. And so while I was at Spring Creek, my parents paid for me to have this wilderness experience. So it's essentially they take you out into the Montana wilderness, and you have like a huge backpack on your back. And so you have to walk 15, 20 miles a day. You're with a big group of people, and each day one of you has to navigate. So if one person doesn't know how to navigate, you could be walking in circles the whole day, but you don't get to switch people that are navigating if they're messing up. You just have to follow their lead, and it's their fault then at the end of the day, and they get scolded if we now don't have a place to camp. So you had to do that. You had to throw tarps up and make your own lean-tos, and if you didn't know how to do that, you just got rained on. And we spent 30 days out in the wilderness like that, and I forgot to mention that. And that was pretty crazy. It was cool it was really cool to get out of away from the facility. That was cool, but
I bet, right?
Yeah. But it wasn't really.
Because you start kind of deprogramming when you get away from it, right?
Yeah, as much as you can, because there's still.
But they don't want to let you have too much freedom.
Yeah. Of course, they have a booklet that they want to indoctrinate you with a bunch of BS there too. But I'd forgotten to say that. Now let me get to after I got out. So I graduated and I went back home. Oh yeah, right before I went back home, my parents came up and said, by the way, right, this was literally like a week and a half before I graduated. They came up, surprise visit, and they said, okay, by the way, you know how we told you that you're never going to have to worry about us getting a divorce your entire life? Well, we're here to tell you that unfortunately we're getting a divorce, and you're going to have to deal with that when you get home. So just so you know, so you can kind of get ready for it when you come home. So that completely threw a curveball at me. So not only had I been
Right.
in boarding school for 22 months, now I have to come home to a completely dysfunctional family. My parents are no longer together. Obviously, they're fighting. My dad's crying every single day.
You should have sent them for the divorce. You should have sent them there.
Well, yeah, something.
Now
Yeah,
you guys need to go,
yeah. Why
Yeah.
why are you guys getting divorced now when I just spent all this time trying to build myself back up? Why are you guys now falling apart? You know?
Yeah.
So I felt, that was really hard. So initially when I came back, the combination of being pissed that I was sent there, my parents' divorce, all the brainwashing that went on, feeling like I never got to be a teenager, really, all of these factors led into me falling into heavy drug use.
Mhm.
And so the second I tried heroin, I was using it to avoid, and I told myself, I'm fucked, essentially.
Yeah.
I told myself, this is too good. And it just, because it's like a warm blanket. Like I have 12 months plus sober now, but what I compare heroin to is a soft, warm blanket that encompasses your entire body, and you don't have any worries, and anything that you're worrying about, you don't worry about. And so that instantly clicked with me. I didn't want to think about all the trauma that I'd went through for 22 months. I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody, because how am I even going to start a conversation with the average person about this? The majority of people don't even know that places like this exist. And so, my friends would be talking, having conversations about, how they're married now, how they have this new job and whatnot. And I'm just sitting there the entire time, thinking like, I can't even relate to any of this. Like, I've been locked up for 22 months. I don't even know what music is out now. I don't know what movies are out now. I don't know how to relate to people, how to even start a conversation. So I felt alone on top of everything else. And so
you were suffering from PTSD,
yeah,
and
totally.
you needed to relax. I mean, I get it. The heroin gave it to you. You needed to relax. I mean, I'm not promoting heroin, but dear God, I mean, of course, you needed a break.
Yeah.
You needed physical freaking break.
Yeah, I needed it, and I paid for it later, and I'm definitely glad that I'm sober now. It's been a long journey, but I definitely understanding why I went to it is like half the battle, in my opinion. Understanding why you went to it and what you were trying to avoid is also a big piece to it too, because if you're going to repress stuff, that's never healthy, in my opinion. Now that I've actually, started to talk to people, I feel like this podcast is healing, but at the same time, me being an empath and feeling everything, when I hear a story, I take it in and my body multiplies it by 100 or a factor or so. And so at the same time, it's taxing on my mental health at the same time. So I can only do so many, but I definitely understand why I fell into addiction. So I fell into addiction, and I spent years doing drugs, and nothing glamorous about it. And so I ended up getting kicked out of my parents' house. Pretty much the life contract fell through like about a week and a half after I got home. I pretty much said, F this. I don't, I flat out said I want to be like
a double betrayal. You got betrayed by throwing into this, then you get it back out, and you're betrayed again by your parents divorcing, and you've been through all this horror of a mind control freaking POW camp or whatever. And now you're like, what do I, Jesus? I mean, of course, of course you needed to get it fixed now. Luckily, medications came along and people could go to a therapist and get on medication and get immediate help. So you just happen to go the heroin route.
Yeah. So I got kicked out of my house a lot, and after I became homeless, I had a lot of bad experiences being homeless, and just it took me, getting sober, because until you're sober, at least off of hard drugs, in my opinion, you need a clear mind. I still smoke weed. I'm not gonna lie, but I needed to have a clear mind in order to start processing what I'd been through, what I'd actually felt when I was in these places. Because for years after I went out there, I wasn't sober. I couldn't, my body I refused to process anything. I didn't want to go through that pain. But I realized, you actually, your podcast has actually taught me how to do the focusing thing. And I actually started listening to my body. And so between that and getting sober, I've managed to bring things up to the surface. And then whenever I'm feeling something now, I just try and go with it, no matter where I'm at. Doesn't matter if people see you crying on the bus. If you feel like you need to cry and you're on the bus, cry on the freaking bus. Just feel.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. That's really good to hear. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I don't ever heard that story of what brought you to this work and how it affected you. And thanks for sharing that, because the focusing method, I think, is a real lifesaver. People don't know how to deal with that.
Your body. It's all about listening to your body, really.
Yeah. Listen to your body, and it takes radical acceptance, and you have to be your own best friend. That's so important, to be on your side. And those are not the things that we're taught. We're taught the people closest to us are not on our side, pretending to be on our side. So then we learn this betrayal from the people that are closest to us, and then we internalize it, and then we're split inside, and we're freaking confused. And then somewhere we bump into something, somebody, or whatever, where somehow this door opens where, what if I radically loved myself? And what if I decided it's okay to be in my own team? See, I still have, my family, at which I've separated, there's still a lot of them, they're still infected with that self-guilt and self-hate. And I know that they would, I don't know if, do you have siblings?
I was actually adopted at birth, and I am an only child.
Okay. So I've had siblings, and also with my mother, she passed away, but where any successes of mine or any thing I would be doing for myself, it was like they looked at it like I was self-centered and selfish. It wasn't like they were happy for it.
Yeah.
If it broke, if it wasn't serving them in some way, shape, or form, I was selfish.
Yeah.
And that's sick. And so I had to deal personally with, and I'll tell you, it still happens. Like I say, with trauma, you change, as you evolve and you awaken to what it is, and you awaken to a relationship with it, right?
Yeah.
So the guru and the Chila or whatever, the difference is the relationship inside and what shifted inside, and the idea that you just become all enlightened and float around like a ball of light is just silly times. But you are enlightened in the sense as you have a relationship with what's arising inside of you. And so this is a big one, is this sense of shame and guilt. You're not doing it right. Look at you. You're selfish. You're not going to figure it out. You're this, you're that. But here's the crazy thing about that. You have to radically accept that voice to get into a place of radically accepting yourself, because that voice is you.
Yeah.
And that's that in through the outdoor business. People are like, no, I got to say no to that voice, and I got to go over here and love myself.
Yeah.
No, you've entered into an ideological thing. It's ideological. You've got to go into the emotion of what's hating you inside of you. You got to say hello to that dragon. You got to be with it. It's not comfortable.
Yeah.
But you got to. That's your energy. So that energy's got to disperse into your body.
Yeah.
And then you're in your present moment with that energy dispersed in your body. So, I'm glad to hear that the focusing really, really helped you. I mean, that means a lot to me to know that. I mean, I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know enough. I didn't know, I didn't ever hear you really say it. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And your work also broke me out of the delusion of, I used to be a huge watcher of,
Leo Gura?
No, not Leo Gura. Corey Good and David Wilcock.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah. I was a huge follower of them, and you broke that bubble for me, and you also broke the bubble of Christianity, and Like I got to see Christianity for what it truly was, and I was like, wow, okay, that makes sense now. Makes sense now.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that. It's always nice to hear that that stuff that I have done actually, I've when I hear it, it's just nice to know, because I know what it is, you know what I mean, and it's nice to hear when it actually has made sense for people and opened them up. It's a all this stuff is complex and complicated, and sometimes people need it unpacked and spelled out. What the hell is this thing? Because there's so much guilt and weirdness and stuff around it, and then they got the word salad and all this stuff, and unless it's like unpacked and placed on a table, that's that, you know what I mean? Leo Guru was a tough one for a lot of people, and they, that's why not very many people unpacked Guru, and I did, because I was capable of doing it at the time.
Yeah.
I get most of my responses, most video views seem to be around Leo Guru, because I mean, people think it's innocent, but I've had people from different places around the world tell me stories of how they literally, I know one guy went into, I think he went into a mental institute after he broke away from Leo Guru. He had to go on medications and stuff, and he needed to talk to me after he watched some videos. And so this stuff is no joke. It depends on who you are, where you come from. And again, like for you, you probably had some natural mania in you, which is actually a gift. So that a child like you needs to be treated in a certain way to allow that energy to move in a particular way. And a lot of times parents just don't know how to do it, don't know what to do and how to deal with it, but how your constitution is on the inside, and how you approach Leo Guru's work or the Christian, it's going to be different. You know what I mean? It's going to hit different things for you. And some people are like, oh, it's no big deal, but they still are, they still are infected. They're just not, one person got really sick and one person got the sniffles. You know what I mean? So there's an antivirus to these viruses,
Yeah.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you sharing all these, and I want you to share in this final little segment here, if there's anything else you want to share, or if you wanted to tell a little bit more about the story.
Yeah.
So you want to share some advice to others that happen to be, in a situation like this?
Yeah, I have a couple things. So I wanted to also touch on, after I got out, it's also been really hard. Like, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Usually, even with my relationship with women, I noticed that I don't approach women even to this day, really in a public setting, because I feel like it comes from, I was never allowed to look at women at the program. And it was gotten so ingrained in my mind that if I do this, I'm bad. If I do this, if I look at a woman, I'm bad. That now it's like, I won't approach a woman, and like, I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, like, oh, self-correct, like you're looking at a woman or something like that. So I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And definitely just, I got OCD really bad from it. My perfectionism just off the wall, because everything, you had to have your bed military style. You had to have your baskets, all your clothes folded in a particular way. You had to have everything neat, couldn't be messy. So I'm always like OCD, super perfectionist, which can go both ways. Perfectionism can be good, but it can also be unhealthy. And I also wanted to share, one of the worst experiences I had in intervention was actually, I was in there 4 days, and by the time I got out, I had lost track of so much time, and my brain was like cut away from all the senses and stimuli, because they have like bars in the windows, and the windows are glossed out and stuff, so you don't get any stimuli. That I thought a couple hours had passed, and it had been 4 days. And when they pulled me out of the solitary confinement, I actually collapsed to the ground, because my body didn't know how to react when the sun hit me.
Isolation.
Yeah. And so that was really crazy.
That's a form of torture.
Yeah, it is. And we view it as torture for rapists and murderers and stuff in prisons. So why are we doing this to teenagers that are innocent? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted to let people know that there still are schools like this open. That's one of my main goals for this podcast that I'm doing, is to bring new legislation, get these places either fully regulated or shut down. Because there's a place called, for example, there's a place called Agape Boarding School right now, which I can't remember where it is, but they're under the guise of Christianity, using it as a veil. And there's boys in there being raped, beat up on camera,
Wow.
all sorts of things. And this is still going on to this day. So I just want people to know that no, these schools are not non-existent. They're still going. When they get caught, they just rebrand. It's no longer even WASP. I think they have a new acronym now that they have for the umbrella corporation. They just rebrand, buy off the courts if they have to. These people that have these schools have way too much money in their pocket, and in my opinion,
Well, they could be tied to sex trafficking.
I think it is. I think
You
it is.
know, I mean, and just an idea. Maybe you've thought of this. Have you thought of, you've got quite a number of people that you've been interviewing. Have you thought of coordinating any type of a protest at one of these locations?
That would be a good idea. That would be a hell of
Yeah.
a good idea. I will look into that. I bet I could organize something for sure.
Yeah. Even if it's a couple of you or one or whatever, but when I went out in Sedona on my own with that sign, that was just a couple days. I was only out there an hour at a time. I had all kind of people. That shifted a lot in Sedona. I was really surprised. I had people come up to me left and right telling me, and because it was also in the paper, but it just goes to show you what one person can do that steps out of the norm and just does something. I got this house because of that.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? So when one person walks up to one of those places, goes to Staples, makes themselves a sign, walks down there. See, the whole point of all this stuff is taking action. Like,
yeah.
If you go like, oh, I can't get enough people to go, or because you got to have people all over. You got a lot of people that you've interviewed. So there's got to be one of these locations near some of these. And so, if you share that with these people, that look, if you can't coordinate nothing, just go to Staples, get a sign, walk over and stand there. That's what I did. It took me literally from the point of the idea. I was on the street in an hour.
Yeah.
When I conceived the idea, I went to Staples, grabbed the thing, drew the thing down, walked over there, stood there. Maybe a little longer, but you know what I mean? So it's the injecting yourself into the matrix, so to speak, and not just talking about it, but doing it, and you put yourself, you interrupt the flow.
Yeah.
You interrupt this by physically inserting yourself into a location. You don't belong.
Yeah.
You don't belong here. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
You're interrupting this whole matrix, a system that we have.
Yeah.
How dare you? We're calling it the authorities. So that I think that would be a really good thing to consider.
For sure. I also want people to know that I have a merch store now. If anybody wants to buy merch to support the podcast, I have a merch store. It's on, if you go to tpublic.com and type in Straight Outta BS podcast, it should pop up.
Let's do that. Hold on a second. We got tpublic.com.
Oh no, TEE. Like t-shirt.
TPublic.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So go to tpublic.com.
Yep.
Type in
straight. Yep.
Oh, hold on. Trying to get you to change your name. But you do you. Straight out of what?
BS. B.S. And then podcast. Or see if it comes up for that.
Straight out of BS. Hold on. Can you see what I'm doing?
Yeah. You need another T on the Outta. There you go.
Hi, Outta. Straight out of BS podcast t-shirts.
Is it popping up?
Well, are you seeing it? It's right there.
I don't see it. Hold on a second.
Let me click on t-shirts. Oh, here we go. No,
No,
that's not
that's
it.
not the one. Hold on a second. I'm gonna send you the link
The
via
banana splits.
banana splits. Okay, hold on just 1 second. Okay. T public. And then my storefront, share my store, copy. Okay, here you go. I'm sending it to you. I sent it to your Facebook Messenger.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it right there.
So
I got t-shirts.
Okay.
If you buy a t-shirt, it's front and back printed. Only the t-shirts are front and back, but if you buy a t-shirt, it has my kitten on the back of it, and then my logo on the front. All the other shirts that I have just have the logo right there. I have tank tops, I have baby shirts, I have kid shirts, I have mugs, I have tapestries, I have phone covers. Pretty much anything you can think of, I have. Masks.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta tell you, straight out of BS is kind of cool. It is kind of cool. I'm a bit of a marketing geek, but those are kind of things that people don't forget.
Yeah.
So you may be ahead of me on this one. Well, good for you, man. I'm really happy to support what you do. And listen, it takes a lot of courage to do what you did. Listen, man, you're your own hero, brother. You know what I mean? You fought the good fight. You had to fight against, unspeakable mental challenges and emotional traps, confusing complexes and a maze of mommy stuff and daddy stuff and the memories of those connections with your primary caretakers and what is that and what is me and what happens when I'm 13 and I'm going through changes and then mom said this, then I got school stuff going on, what's the world about, and then this happens, that happens, and then you start growing hair in your chest, and then the next thing you know you're getting thrown into this cult, what's going on there, and then the world's mad at you because they don't like you for whatever fucking reason, you know what I mean? It's hard. And then you finally splash into give me some heroin. And then you do heroin and then people get mad at you for doing heroin. And you just can't get a break. It's like no matter what you do, you're bad. And and it comes to a point where you got to be your own best friend. You got to be your own best friend. I've been doing this for quite a while. I haven't done it the best. I'm starting to learn how. I'm kind of restarting, with my marketing, and I'm starting over with the wisdom I've gained from it. But you can set out to do something good in the world, set out to do your best to do something good, and you can get kicked right in the face. And so you got to be. I learned this a long time ago. If it's to be, it's up to me. I got to be my own rock and roll friend. I got to be in my own self-interest, and be in the interest of the people I care about as well. But you really got to be hardcore in your own highest level of survival. And that's something I've learned because nobody gives a shit. People you will be lucky if you find a few friends that give a shit. But ultimately, everyone's giving a shit for themselves, which they should be doing. You know what I mean? But sometimes there's this thing where people are avoiding really giving a shit for themselves, and they're struggling with the shit that people did to them, holding them back. And so they're being held back by other influences, and they got to get rid of that. They got to they got to break through that, and then be about their own business. And it's an evolution.
For sure.
It's an experience. And I think you've done great, man. I'm proud of you.
For sure. I'm proud of you too, man. You've done a lot of work, man. You should give yourself a pat on the back too.
Thank you.
several books. You know, you're still going on the podcast, even though you've had a couple of channels. You're still doing it, man. You didn't give up. So, kudos.
Well, you know, listen, I am satisfied with what I've done. I could walk away today and, you know what I mean? I would have, had I not finished the books, you know what I mean? Had I not completed the music project, I would be more butthurt about everything. In a weird way, because I finished it, because I'm satisfied, I'm much more reckless out here. You know what I mean? I am reckless. I'm not gonna lie. I don't put as much attention and work into really taking care of, you know what I mean? Like when I found my music, the work that goes into creating an audience and showing up for that audience, I'm kind of like, well, I don't have the energy that I had before. I found my passion. I found it. I can turn it on anytime, and I'm a happy guy. I love fully satisfied with my philosophy, fully satisfied. When you start extending yourself into the world, that's where you start having to deal with people and deal with shit. And sometimes it's better to just, you know, so in some ways it's been a blessing that you know, but now I'm kind of like, I'm just doing now what I wanted to do in the beginning with the books, is to give it the proper promotion. Plus I'm going into this new, so I feel like I've matured, and I appreciate you giving me that feedback. That means a lot. And I appreciate you being so supportive. And yeah, I feel like now is the time to do things that like I would have done them in the beginning, but I had to work through all that stuff. But I'm glad that the old stuff's being put up on this, because then it's just not lost. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and there's a lot of really good stuff in there.
And you know what? I think he's going to have one a day until they're all up. So one a day till they're all up. But listen, I just want to thank you for coming on, and I want to I can't express to you enough how impressed I am with your channel and with what you've been doing and putting your energy into that. And I hope it grows, if that's what you want, and spread that wide. And you know, and Jordan, you have a, if it's true what you're saying about these groups that's still going on, you have a whole job in front of you as the hero's journey, who has escaped, has been through it, has come back, who's talking about it. And now you can do the work of saving other people. If this is where you're going, I don't know. It doesn't matter whether you do, I mean, you know, you can do it or not do it. But what's interesting about it is you do have it laid out in front of you. So you have a channel and a whole project that could just grow, man. You just it could get huge. You know?
For sure. I hope it does. I hope it does. For sure.
Well, it's just consistency. You kicked off in a you know, with a bang. So
for sure.
Keep rocking and rolling. All right, brother. Thank you so much. And we'll of course be in touch and catch you on that. Why don't you just hold on a second? We'll go ahead and close this, and we'll say goodbye afterwards.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you. Actually, nobody. We had a few people on. I appreciate it. And again, I thought this would be good to have on the channel. And I hope everybody's enjoying the old videos. All right. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.